Get started. You want to go ahead and turn that on? Okay. I'm going to get started because we have a lot of material for this evening. And I just want everybody to know that I actually turned down the thermostat about 3 or 5 degrees so that we can be comfortable in here with this kind of warmth that might be generating this evening, besides the fact that it's quite warm outside. And I just want to welcome everybody here and to let you know that because there is so much information that we could talk about this evening, that to recognize I'm going to try to take as many questions as I can and also still try to keep the flow going so that we can keep up with all the material. I'm here at the store Tuesday through Saturday. And so if you have a specific question, you can always pop by and ask me here. And I also am available in private practice as well. And so that's another option for you as well. My name is Susan Dunlap, for those of you who may not know me. I've been here in Rebecca's for 20 years now. And as I have actually been in the industry almost 30-some years, what I have witnessed is that within my age range, I have watched my customers age along with me, and 20 years ago everybody was talking about PMS, and now everybody's talking about menopause. And we've all shifted kind of in that direction. And for sort of a little bit of background in the sense for me, I just turned 55, so that I'm right smack in the middle of working with some of the symptoms that you all may be familiar with or possibly expecting to possibly come up for you. And it's taken a lot of challenge, shall we say, to look at all the information out there and say what's useful, what is going to be something that can be actually doable, and because there's a lot of confusion about the options, I want to present quite a number of things that are available to help and to get further information beyond that if you need it for later. And so again, this is somewhat of an overview, but I will try to take specific questions if it comes up on that. One of the things that I would like to kind of sort of review, I mean, everybody is pretty familiar with, I think, the menstrual cycle. But it's helpful to review because it actually has a very distinct difference when you are talking about the stages of menopause. You're talking about peri through post, and that's kind of an interesting way of explaining that because I think the word menopause, should be menostop. There's no pause to it. It is technically, menopause is after 12 months of having no periods. That's the actual technical point. But for the most part, you're either pre that point or you're post that point. So you're never, in a sense, post-menopausal because you are in now menopause for the rest of your life. Basically, once you've had that 12 months of no periods at all. But what happens from, say, age 30-something up to 48, 50 something, when you're in that pre and peri stage, versus what happens after that middle years, 50-ish years, 55 or so, going into 60, and then beyond that. What is going on in terms of our cycle, and how does that affect things? Normally, we've got a 4-week cycle. 2 weeks of it are what we would call the cycle where you're working at the beginning stages towards ovulation. And then after ovulation, your second phase. So the first phase is follicular, releasing a follicle, and then the second stage is luteal. And up until the point where you actually start truly going into full menopause, which you have actually not had your periods, the stage is set for estrogen to rise from that first 2 weeks up to the point of ovulation, and then drop rise just a little bit and then really drop down during the second 2 weeks. During the second 2 weeks, progesterone is rising all the way up to the point of just before you have your period, it drops, and then you get your period. Day 1 being your period. So normally, or shall we say sort of up to the point of when you become things shifting, estrogen higher in the first half, estrogen lower in the second half, progesterone higher in that second half, higher on the second 2 weeks. What happens, unfortunately, for a lot of people with PMS, and it mimics itself in situations of perimenopause, is that during that second half of the cycle, the estrogen hasn't dropped as much, or the progesterone hasn't risen as much as it should. So you have an imbalance between the two, usually referred to as estrogen dominance. You have too much estrogen relative to the progesterone. It's a ratio. That can happen from a couple of different reasons, and one of which is that we have estrogens in our environment that we're taking in. They're referred to as xenoestrogens. They are coming from plastics. They are coming from meats that have been fed, or animals that have been fed hormone-containing feed. They're coming from bus exhaust, petrochemicals. They're in our cosmetics. They are in the things we pick up and eat, such as plastic wrapped products that we get out of the grocery store. So xenoestrogens, pesticides that are in the environment, etc., create excess estrogen in our bodies. They actually are a hormone disruptor. They cause our normal cycles to be problematic. And this can be part of the reason that women have had hard cycles in that second half of their cycle. And it can be part of why menopause can be more difficult than we'd hope. So xenoestrogens are something that you can look into in your own daily habits and look at ways of eliminating those as much as possible. Another way to eliminate some of those, and actually any excess estrogen that your body may be producing during that second half of the cycle, is by eating lots of cruciferous vegetables. Your broccoli, your kale, your Brussels sprouts, collards, those are the ones that actually help to support the liver and take it out of the body. Yes?
You're talking about when you're talking premenopause.
The question is whether or not I'm talking about just premenopause, but actually not truly that. Anytime there is excess estrogen in the body, and that can happen even in the years prior to completely not having a period.
Okay, so, but in menopause we're talking there's hardly any.
Her question is about, in menopause, is there hardly any estrogen? What happens then? It is true that estrogen begins to drop at the point at which we have no more periods. But it's not always true that we aren't at that point still estrogen dominant. We may have had the situation where the progesterone just plummeted and the estrogen hasn't quite dropped down as much yet. So it can be a state of still an imbalance of the ratio, even after we've stopped having our periods. So
I just wonder if cruciferous vegetables are still important when you're in menopause.
anytime there's estrogen dominance and you're trying to get rid of excess estrogens in the body, using the cruciferous vegetables, that's hard to say, is a good thing to do. They are one way of helping to support the body to get rid of those things. There is a product that actually is a concentrate of that. It's for short called DIM, DIM. And DIM is very helpful for essentially doing that, but much more in a concentrated manner. Basically a tablet that supports the liver, helps the body to process those excess estrogens and pull them out of the body. And I bring that up partly because of the fact that we have to recognize that particularly during the first years in our 30s going into 50s, when our periods seem to be all over the map and the symptoms may be shifting constantly, there is often still a situation where you have more estrogen than progesterone. And then as we shift later on, as estrogen begins to drop, as well as the progesterone, everything sort of bottoms out. And you get on a much leveler plane on a much lower level, starting in perhaps your mid-50s or so, and then continuing on. So that estrogen dominance may be a factor more in perimenopause than in postmenopause. One of the things that is important is to actually look at the symptoms of what's happening in your system, what's happening in your body. And some of that will give you a clue as to whether you are in a situation where you have estrogen dominance or not. Yes?
Is that something that you could test for, or how would you know? Or you're saying just use the symptoms to go by?
The question is about testing to know whether or not you're in that situation of estrogen dominance. You can test, but the problem is that our estrogen and progesterone are usually all over the map. So every day is going to be slightly different, and each course day of the month is going to be slightly different, particularly during perimenopause when it's just shifting almost hourly. So you can, and if you do that kind of testing, it's usually recommended that you do a saliva test that's done literally throughout the day, so that you can at least get a full range to find out what's at least happening on that particular day in your situation. But in many cases, we can look to the symptom patterns and say this is what is going to be helpful, and actually kind of tune in to what our bodies are doing and get more information on that from that direction. It's a little difficult because some of the same symptoms happen for too much and too little estrogen. Things like hot flashes can happen in either direction. There's a few that tend to be more specific for excess estrogen: breast tenderness, bloating, extreme moodiness, irritability, and perhaps blood clotting or flooding if you are still having your periods, tend to be more estrogen dominant factors. Yes? Can I repeat those again? Let's see. Blood clotting, flooding, breast tenderness, and a sense of bloating and or weight gain, swelling, particularly water, and also irritability and moodiness, yes. Those two, the moodiness can also come obviously along with other situations as well. But estrogen dominance. Say that again?
I said the moodiness and the irritability also can be symptoms of menopause.
Moodiness and irritability can be across the board. It's true. Pre and post.
Don't go away.
But you'll notice when you look at PMS problems, PMS is during that second half when the progesterone is low and estrogen is high situation, that you get the traditional PMS kind of thing. Yes?
How can you increase the progesterone?
Okay. Her question is actually excellent for at this point. She's asking, how can you increase progesterone? So we've talked about decreasing estrogen. How can you increase progesterone? There are a couple of ways that are probably the most common. One is to use the herb Vitex. Its full name is Vitex agnus castus. It also goes by the name of chaste tree berry, and you'll see it both ways in the marketplace. You can make tea with it, you can take it as a capsule or tincture.
Is that V-I-T-E-X?
V-I-T-E-X, yes, Vitex. And it's not an immediate, like, notice it next day. It may take 3 or 4 months because it's a nourishing herb. It's not going to change things overnight. But it does encourage the body's own production of progesterone and supports that. The other is to actually take true progesterone, right smack there. You can do that in an over-the-counter topical cream, which is available. It is true progesterone, not a synthetic. It is made from wild yam, sometimes soy, but because it actually is chemically identical to our body's progesterone, it does absorb well through the skin. It does not have the problem of getting processed through the liver, and you are using it in a manner that would be appropriate depending on whether you are menstruating or not. 2 or 3 weeks depending on time. I'm sorry.
I've just read a lot that actually what you can buy over the counter, like oil and whatever, that it's not truly going to do anything, that it doesn't molecularly, whatever, sufficient to take care of the problem. I mean, there's a lot happening. What you buy itself is not going to work.
Okay. Her statement is that she's read about products that say that they are progesterone creams, but they actually don't have the active ingredient in them. And what I have seen is that you can buy things called wild yam creams. Wild yam cream is not progesterone. Progesterone creams that do state on them that they have USP progesterone in them do have it added. It is not a large quantity. It's not the quantity that you would get perhaps if you were taking it as a prescription. But it is true progesterone, and it is bioidentical to what the body produces. It is made from wild yam in a chemical fashion that we cannot do in our bodies. We do not have the enzymes to actually create it ourselves from just taking yam, for instance. But when it's put into a cream form, it is available. It's not, again, as high a level as you would get in a prescription, but many women do find it useful as an interim product if they want to use a hormone, because it is a hormone. And it is allowed to be sold over the counter because it is recognized to be generally safe and non-problematic if you are using it according to directions, obviously. Yes, question.
I have a question, a comment. I started using it, and in 3 weeks, my hot flashes were gone.
Okay. Her comment was that she started using it, and in 3 weeks, her hot flashes were gone. And we're looking at an actual hormone here, so it makes sense that you're going to be seeing change more quickly than an herb, which is working more from a nourishing and tonifying point of view. And I'm actually right on schedule to go right into talking about the availability of estrogenic type of products and the progesterone type of support that you can get from foods and herbs and nutrients and such. I'm going to go over that a little bit, and we'll also come back right after that into talking more about the hormones, bioidentical, synthetic, natural, and so forth, and so on. Okay. Yes?
When you have time in that to talk about it, when you use the progesterone cream, how you dose yourself according to where you are, you said according to your cycles and whatnot.
Yes, but help me remember, and I will do that. Okay. So what I'd like to refer people to is the fact that in your outline I did make a large chart of foods and herbs that have what we call phytoestrogenic support. And herbs can be very helpful in supporting the body, but they're usually working from the point of view of either supporting the adrenals, which are important for the production of the estrogen as the ovaries start to stop producing it, or they're useful for their mineral content, or they may have actually very small quantities of true plant estrogens. It's the same chemical structure in plants as it is in our bodies, except that it's minute compared to what our bodies produce. And particularly if you're already menstruating and producing plenty of hormones, these plants really won't have much of an effect on you at all. But if you're taking herbs and you have slowed down in your own production significantly, these little phytoestrogens will fit the same receptor sites in our bodies. They just don't have as much of a punch, but they do fit. And so they can sometimes act as what I would call a modulator. So in this case, if your system is low in estrogen, it will actually fit the receptor site and give you just a little hint of a boost. But if your body is either producing more estrogen than it needs, or it's getting it from the outside sources, or if there's some reason that you are already full of enough estrogen and you actually may want to block some of the estrogen in concerns, for instance, like with breast cancer and positive receptor sites, those phytoestrogens will fill that site and keep the other estrogen from getting in. So it acts as a modulator. It will both support and reduce depending on what is best for the body. So they're very, very safe from that angle. A huge number of foods contain these products. I listed a couple that are the most well-known. one of which, of course, are the whole legume family. And I think part of the reason that other cultures, particularly those in perhaps cultures that are still eating more traditional diets, have generally less problems with menopausal symptoms than we do, is that most of those cultures still use a lot of beans as a good primary protein source for themselves. So they're getting a lot of these naturally occurring phytoestrogens in the legumes that they eat, the beans and peas and pulses and such. And those are great to have. I mean, beans are just a wonderful food. They are high in fiber, high in protein, and high in the phytoestrogens. The one that is sort of well known for this support is soy. Those of you who've heard me talk before recognize that I'm not a huge soy fan. And what I have seen with soy, from my reading, is that it's a difficult bean to digest. It has a lot of components in it that are hard, literally in the gut, to break down. And it also has what we might call sort of anti-nutrients in it. It has an ability to block the thyroid from working as well as it should. And the thyroid, in this case particularly, can get already whomped a little bit during menopause. So soy actually, while it has some positives, may be more difficult than other sources to be beneficial for an overall experience. If you're going to be using soy, I would recommend using it as most traditional cultures did, which was to ferment it, because that breaks down the components in the soy, which can cause the problems with it to be more difficult to absorb and or have the thyroid problems or sort of anti-nutrient, anti-mineral support. Fermented products would be miso, they would be tempeh, and tamari, which is your traditional soy sauce. There's also natto. Most people don't eat it here in the United States, but if you're in Japan, it's certainly one to eat. The other products that we're more familiar with, perhaps, say tofu and soy milk, they are still mostly a whole food. They've lost their fiber. And because of the processing of making them, it has broken down some of the components. So I still eat them occasionally, but I don't use them as a daily supplement or actual daily food. What I don't really recommend are the soy isolates. These are basically soy that's been processed. You've taken out the protein, then you've broken down the protein to the single isolate of the component that even then can get broken down further to just the isoflavone itself. And that is the component that has the estrogenic qualities. Because you've become so far away from the original food, at this point, soy protein powders themselves that you might buy as a protein supplement. You can also buy actual capsules of soy protein tablets, and you can also, we have them here. People are familiar with them. Some that are actually just the actual chemical isoflavone directly from the soy itself. I personally don't think that that's the best way to go. I like to stick to whole foods as much as possible and at least work with a food that has been traditionally used in culture that has shown to be safe over long periods of time. If someone wants to use an isolated isoflavone, which is the component that gives that estrogenic effect, I would recommend taking it from red clover as opposed to soy. Red clover has the similar products, the genistein, the diadzine. It actually has two others as well. And those are the same ones that are found in soy, but you don't have the anti-nutrient problem with red clover that you do when you have it from soy. Red clover can be taken as a tea. It can also be taken in tablet form. I brought my mug up here with the red clover on it because I thought it would be, it's so pretty. You can go out in a field that hasn't been sprayed, pick some red clover blossoms, throw them in a cup of tea, and enjoy them. They're really nice. They actually taste quite good.
I was wondering where the vegetarian meat products fall in this category?
She was asking about the vegetarian meat products and other soy isolate products that are turned into food for vegetarians. And they do fall under the category of being an isolate. I mentioned that. Textured vegetable protein is one of those. It's just one step away from being a chemical. It's been processed and processed and processed and processed. And also the various soy protein analog foods, the veggie dogs and the hamburger things and all those kinds of things. If you're going to eat a soy product and you want something like that, I would recommend ideally making something from tofu. At least it's a little closer than working with something that's been so highly processed in that way. So as far as foods, the ones to be looking at to support us phytoestrogenically would be your whole bean category. Chickpeas, black beans, all kinds of peas, those are great. Enjoy them to their hilt. If you are looking for a product that can help in other ways for our health, I mentioned again the family of the cruciferous vegetables. And another family that I didn't put on there, but I think really should be included, are all the sea vegetables, because the sea vegetables are so high in trace minerals that they are supportive for our adrenal glands and supportive for our thyroid. And during this time period, we do see that the thyroid and the adrenals start having to work extra hard. As the ovaries stop producing the estrogens, the adrenals take up the slack. They're already under stress. Our fast-paced world, all of the actual stress that we're under daily, has pushed us in the way that our adrenals are often on the edge of fatigue anyway. And when you add the additional burden of trying to produce more hormones, then the adrenals kind of go, huh, and they're really exhausted. And then you find situations where people may have things that they believe are chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or problems where in reality it's adrenal exhaustion. So to support the adrenals, you want your B vitamins particularly. They support the entire nervous system. The whole B vitamin complex, vitamin B6, B12, niacin, the whole thing. You want also the herb, well, there's a number of herbs, but ginseng is a traditional one for adrenal support. You can get American ginseng, Panax ginsengs from Asia. There is what used to be called Siberian ginseng. It's now referred to by its botanical name of Eleutherococcus, or Eleuthero for short. The ones that seem to be the best for menopause are actually the Eleutherococcus. And the reason for that is that it tends to be more cooling energy rather than hot, fiery energy. And as we might know, some of that fire energy we don't quite need yet. We're already a little hot. The other things, I'm sorry? It's called Eleuthero, Eleutherococcus. And I don't know if I can spell it out. Eleuro is the short form. Sometimes referred to, like I say, older style was referred to as Siberian ginseng. Yes? One second. Did you have a question?
Oh, I was going to ask, when you said sea vegetables, are you talking like is in the letter C, or are you talking like ocean sea?
Her question is about when I mentioned sea vegetables. I am talking about SEA, as in seaweeds, sea vegetables. Okay, sea vegetables, what about those? Sea vegetables, I really like them. I guess that comes from my heritage, but what I have found, there's kelp, which is easy to use in the form of kelp shake. You can actually just use granulated kelp instead of salt. You can use dulse, which is a purple one that's beautiful, and it has a soft texture so that you can actually just eat it straight out of the bag. It does come dried. But D-U-L-S-E. D as in dog, D-U-L-S-E. Dulse is also available in a smoked form. They took applewood smoke, and so it's really good in anything you might like bacon. So it's wonderful in soups, it's wonderful in omelets, and I find that it is one of my favorite just to eat, like I say, straight out of the bag. Another one of the sea vegetables that I find is very nourishing is probably people are used to is nori, which is what is the wrapper for nori rolls and sushi rolls. It's that seaweed on the outside, that's nori. You can enjoy it having your sushi. You can also enjoy it by toasting it and also crumbling it on top of things. It's very, very good. There's a lot of good vegetables in the sea and a lot that we don't explore, but they're all extremely high in iodine, particularly kelp, and the iodine supports the thyroid. The thyroid, along with the adrenals, often tends to be depleted, and many of the symptoms that we realize that we're having, such as loss of hair, drier skin, lack of energy, poor sleep, these are all directly often thyroid conditions. And even if the test says you're normal, there are many situations where normal is only a broad range, and you may be low in the normal, but and still said normal, but it actually is not normal for you. You really need a higher level of thyroid support.
Wait, how, I mean, these are like sort of powders and dry things, and it seems like how much do you need to eat things to do the trick?
Her question is, how much of these seaweeds do you eat to do this stuff? If you're actually trying to just to reach, say, your daily requirement of iodine, you wouldn't need much. I would say for kelp, a serving would be about, to actually have your thyroid be working a lot, you probably would be using a serving a day, and in that case, depending on the seaweed that you're using, it would vary, because if you're having it as a side vegetable, and there are types that would work more like that, you might be looking at a 1/4 cup of something, like kombu or one of the other ones. I would look at sea vegetables as like a condiment. It's an extra that you add in, and you're using it over a period of time. It might be 3 to 4 or 5 months. This is not an over the night type of situation.
Not something to go buy like a squash and add it to your vegetables on your dinner.
She says, is this like a squash you can go buy and add to like your vegetables? You can. You can. They don't generally come already hydrated. They are generally dehydrated, but you can buy a bag of seaweed salad, for instance, and you just add water to a little bit of lemon juice, and it's yummy, and it's ready to go. Yes?
In addition to these vegetables, these sea vegetables, can you take a supplement, an iodine supplement? Or?
Question is, can you take an iodine supplement in addition to or in place of the sea vegetables? Yes, you can, but you miss out on all the other trace minerals that you don't get from the real food. Certainly, iodine supplements would be a way to go and support yourself. Many people actually take kelp in a tableted form. It is available in that way as well. So there you get the benefit of some of the trace minerals, and you're still getting the excess or the support of the iodine. Did you have a question?
Any problem for men to be eating these?
What about men eating these? Oh, these are great for men. No problem. Because they need those trace minerals too. They've got a thyroid. They've got to keep it happy too. Not a problem at all. So we talked a little bit about the adrenals, and I really want to emphasize the fact that many people want to come and get sort of a one-shot pill that's going to take care of everything, make these symptoms go away, and it just doesn't happen like that usually. Now, occasionally you'll get something, you say, my God, that was it. Had nothing, no problems for 3 whole weeks, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. Now I'm back to where I was. Part of the problem with this time frame, or so we say the challenge of this time, is that things change. This is change of life. This is a constant change. And it means that what will work today will not necessarily work tomorrow. And that we have to be constantly listening and constantly being able to try something else, see how it goes. And I don't want to put it out that there's nothing out there that works, because things do help with people. But people always say, well, what do you have? What's the best thing? And unfortunately, it's very individual. What's going to work for you is not going to necessarily work for you, is not necessarily going to work for you. But I actually want to take this moment because it's really helpful to hear from people what has helped them. And I'd like to kind of just have people show their hands. I will actually re-go over it and say, what has helped you? What have you found that maybe has made things a little bit easier on any of the symptoms that could be out there for menopause? Yes?
I found in perimenopause that
Okay, thank you. She said in perimenopause, the progesterone cream really helped. Black cohosh was able to take care of everything, gone, no problems. But then as she went into menopause, when all the periods had stopped, she hasn't found anything yet quite that's worked. Let's get a few more people. Anybody have some things that are helping? Yes.
I'm definitely menopause because I had surgery.
Okay.
I'm using the estrol cream.
Estriol?
Estriol cream and the progesterone cream. And
Okay.
the two together, my husband's really happy because I was a witch. They're helping.
Okay, this woman is actually using two hormonal creams that are actually hormones. One is estriol and one is progesterone, and they have definitely helped, taken care of it. Okay.
It's right in the back.
Yes.
Well, basically my life and my body are falling apart. I'm on bioidentical, and I'm using estrotone vaginally, which has helped with vaginal dryness, and that definitely helps, but it's a heavy chemical. I'm not crazy about taking that. The bioidenticals are, I've been on them for 6 weeks, they haven't touched anything. Then I have friends who are on HRT, and in 2 days they feel like their life is back again, so.
Okay, she's saying the bioidenticals have not helped her, but friends with HRT, which are synthetics, have been helped. Anyone have anything that's in the natural category that's helped? Yes.
I similar to you, with the progesterone cream worked beautifully during perimenopause, then stopped working. I read Susan Lee's book and tried a whole gamut of herbs. In the thick of menopause, herbs I couldn't really get much of anything to work. But I use a patch, which is considered bioidentical, estradiol or something like that. Patch as well as oral progesterone, and that's helped tremendously. But like you're saying, there are some days that even that isn't optimal. You still have to watch your diet, and certain foods can bring back symptoms and that. But the doctor told me they were considered bioidentical, but you can't take them indefinitely. I am going to have to take her off of them. She said.
Okay, this woman is also using a hormone combination of estradiol, it sounds like, and I didn't hear the other one, but that they are, one of which is the bioidentical and the other is not, or?
Well, she said they were both like your body makes that. That's a patch.
Okay, so she's using the patch on
The
that.
other is oral progesterone.
And the other is oral progesterone, okay. And again, the differential there is progesterone versus progestin. And I think I want to just go into that a little bit, because the use of the hormones, whether it's synthetic or not, is a big question. And it's been one now for a number of years. And we sort of thought that when the study came out, I think it was 2002, where women were having much greater problems with heart disease when they were on the synthetic hormones, as to the point where they actually stopped giving them. And many doctors immediately started pulling their patients off of this. People started saying, well, is that it? Are we left in the dust here? And then the idea that, well, these were synthetic, they really didn't match the body. What about the ones that our bodies produce? Could this be used instead? And what is referred to as bioidentical or nature-identical hormones are available. Some of them are over the counter, as the progesterone cream is. This woman spoke about the estriol cream. That is actually available over the counter. Estriol is one of the 3 estrogens. Estrogen not just being one item, but actually 3 and actually a little bit more in the body. There is estradiol, which is the strongest and certainly the one that predominates up to the point of menopause. There is estrone, which is also a fairly strong estrogen in the body and is made from some of our fat cells. And then there is estriol, which is the hormone that's considered to be the weakest, but it's also considered to be the most protective of the cells in our body, and particularly helps to counterbalance some of the activity of the estradiol in terms of the prevention of cancers in the breast and so forth. So of the 3, estriol is considered the safest and is now, like I say, available over the counter in a cream form, similar to the way progesterone is available. Progesterone, O-N-E, is the real thing. Progestin or progestogens are not. Those are synthetic molecules. They do not fit the receptor sites in our body in the same way. And in that case, we often get side effects because the body just doesn't really quite know what to do with this. It's not the same thing. If someone is going to do a replacement for what's in their body, it makes sense to use what's in the body to begin with. And those are going to be your true estrogens and true progesterone. And some women find that through the use of the herbal support, the support for the adrenals, the support for the thyroid, the extra vitamins, the extra vitamin E, evening primrose oil, and support, that they're comfortable enough that that's just fine, they're going to make it through. Others find that, you know, they're going nuts and they need something else, or they really wish they had something else, and so they look to the possibility of doing bioidentical hormones. And it's not as easy as you might think, even with that, because again, our systems are shifting constantly. I would recommend that you recognize that this is an opportunity for us as women in this age to do something that women 60, 70 years ago back didn't have. And do we want to be changing menopause into a different kind of experience? And I kind of put that out there because a lot of us are like, no, I don't want to go there. I don't want to be old. I don't want to change. And yet, we want to look at, say, gracefully shifting through, and also we don't want to be miserable. So there's kind of very two big camps on this. The let's go naturally route, and the let's go to the life extension and be as young as we can till as long as we can. And this is a very personal decision that you have to make. I think that we have the opportunity with the bioidenticals to have something that is a safer option to choose now than the synthetic. I would not go to the synthetics at all. There's no need to. But if you decide that you are going to go with a bioidentical, you're going to need to work with it. You're going to need to have a physician who's willing to work with you, take lots of tests, know how your body is functioning, and be willing to play with the dosing on everything that you're doing. The best book that I've seen about that is this one called Natural Hormone Balance. This is Natural Hormone Balance for Women. The author is Uzzi, U-Z-Z-I, Reis, R-E-I-S-S. It is on your handouts. This book describes literally within how to handle the hormones, bioidentical hormones, like every 20 minutes. I mean, they break it down for you completely. He is a doctor, it's not a she, it's a he, but he specializes in this and has worked with women and has chapters on exactly how to do it for yourself if you want to do this. It will break it down to the point of this is what experiences you may have if you have excess estrogen, this is what you're going to experience if you have less progesterone. Maybe you need a little DHA in there. How about the testosterone? What about that one? So testosterone, is an important hormone. It is the one that gives us a little zip, helps us with our muscle strength, helps us with clear thinking, and our sex drive. Because without it, things just kind of go blah. We need that little bit of zip as well. The herbs that are useful in that situation are the libido-supporting herbs, and you'll see those. Maca is one, M-A-C-A. Another one is oats, which is more for general tonic and support. It also is a great nervine, so it supports the nerves as well.
How do you spell that?
That's oats, O-A-T-S, O-A-T-S.
It's a juice?
Just oatmeal.
Just oat?
Oats, and oat straw, and oat straw as well.
It's not
It's
supplemental.
It has some phytoestrogen, but it also has some support for the nervous system, and it's been used as well for support in you know, feeling your oats. So we say.
What form is oat straw?
Oat straw is the green tops of oats before they've been dried to make the cereal. And it looks like alfalfa or something, like loose. We sell it back in the herbs.
And also it's an herb.
It's an herb. The other one that I find, and this is the one that was on my poster, is called shatavari. Shatavari is an Ayurvedic herb. I like the way it sounds, shatavari. And it is well known in that tradition as being a libido support. Its name does mean she who has 100 husbands, and presumably 100 happy husbands. It helps with libido support. It helps with moisture, vaginal moisture. It helps with the ability to increase estrogen as well in the system. And it's in that case, it is actually also used for women who are lactating and need nursing support. It actually has that. We do have it here, yes. Yes. Hold that one back there.
The first item you mentioned was maca?
Maca.
I don't know what that is.
Maca is actually an herb. Actually, it's not really an herb. It's a food. It looks like a small potato, and there is actually an article about it in your handout. It's Peruvian. It's from the way high up altitudes. It's this wonderful food for endurance and stamina and strength. And one of the things that the people who moved to that area found was that the sheep weren't reproducing the way that they should. They were having stillborns, and they started feeding them the maca, and then that all took care of itself, and the reproductive systems were strong, and they regard it as an aphrodisiac as well. It's very safe. It can be used by men and women, and it's a good nourishing food. So it's available in liquid tincture form, it's available in powdered form, and capsule form as well.
And there's nothing that's grown locally, so that, I mean, in Peru they have maca. Do we not have something in this country that isn't the same thing for us?
I would say that there really isn't quite anything the same as that. The closest would probably be our native ginsengs, which are supportive in the broad spectrum and do have some aphrodisiac properties to them according to folklore as such. Yes?
Is the ginseng taken orally, like in a capsule?
How's ginseng taken? Ginseng is really available in virtually any form that you want. The Chinese take the ginseng roots and actually put them in their soups. So you can use it as a food, sliced up and let it steep. I mean, a traditional wonderful healing is chicken soup with ginseng in it. That cures all in China. It's a very excellent food. But you can also buy it in a tincture. You can buy it in capsule form. You can buy the tea, both the dried herb and the instantized tea. And if you ever have a chance to go up on the Blue Ridge, it grows wild around here. The Chinese actually import most of the American ginseng because they know it's so good, the wild ginseng. It is cultivated now in the Wisconsin area, so there are ways of keeping it protected biologically. Yes?
I'm reading Dr. John Lee's book, and I've gotten to the point in the book where he addresses insulin resistance, which is an extreme factor in increasing estrogen in the body, which makes everything get out of whack. Can you address any of that?
For questions about insulin resistance and estrogen, I actually don't think I can go into all that because it's such a huge topic. But what I think I can say is that when you eat a diet of whole foods and you start with things that are full of fiber, naturally occurring fats that are there, having things that have enough protein in them, and avoiding the processed foods, you automatically are eating a low glycemic index diet, which in turn will help to reduce any concerns or proclivity towards insulin resistance. And by doing that, you in turn support the adrenals and wind up helping with the ability of the body to produce as much estrogen as it can. That's the underlying thing. For all diabetes and blood sugar problems, really is getting down into the food as a base, and perhaps working with the possibility of actually doing testing for thyroid, adrenals, and such, because there may be other components in there that need to be looked at. Add some cinnamon in your diet, great blood sugar support. That's another thing you can do, just simple thing, half a teaspoon a day. Great way to support that.
I've heard that like your spiced cinnamon is actually toxic for you compared to like a cinnamon type that you might get here to support blood sugar stability.
The question is about whether cinnamon in just this way that you'd have it off the shelf as a spice might be toxic compared to what you might get in a capsule product. The water solubility of some of the components is perhaps best if you are using it from the point of view of taking a large quantity of it, so that they have taken out some of the components that may have a problem if you're taking large quantities, more than even half a teaspoon a day. I believe, though, that the amount that you would use for general cooking and throwing on your oatmeal shouldn't be a problem for most people in that way. I'm going to have to start moving a little bit along here. We have about 10 minutes. I want to leave a few more times for questions. We've talked about some of the foods. We've talked about some of the herbs. And there's also, continuing a little bit on the bioidentical hormones, the options of doing the hormones means that you will need to work with a physician. And in your handouts, I noted at the end some of the resources that you can look up on the internet to find physicians who will work with you in this way. That's one of those things that's a little tricky, to find someone who's actually even willing to work with you if you want to do that.
Do you know anybody in Charlottesville who works with you other than George Guest?
The only person that I have heard, and I've not talked with him personally about it, but he is Dr. Marty Albert, who works at the the fourth floor of the Wellness Center building. His practice is called Virginia Integrative Medicine. And I know that he said to me that he does work with women doing hormone, and I'm sure with his background that he would be working with bioidenticals. Does anyone else know of somebody here? That's Dr. Marty or Martin Albert. His
at downtown Family Health, there's the female, she is a physician, the gynecologist. She works with a compounding pharmacist to be able to.
So Downtown Family
I
Health.
do not know her name, but
So a woman at Downtown Family Health may be helpful on that. Okay. There is a compounding pharmacy in Richmond called South River, and they may be able to give you some references as well.
Stanton also, the one that I'm using,
In Stanton, what is it called?
it's called
The
the Apothecary.
Apothecary?
I would not recommend.
But she wouldn't recommend. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm on 6 weeks of it and it's doing nothing. They didn't want any saliva testing, any blood work. nothing.
Okay. So she won't, we'll just scratch that one. I have heard good feedback from the ones in Richmond, South River Compounding Pharmacy. If you are deciding that that is a way to go, I would say that you still want to tune into your body and say, what's going on, and in doing so, you may be able to use the least amount of what you're working with. You may find that by using just one compound like the estriol, which isn't as strong as the estradiol or the estrone, may be a factor. Those of us who have gained that extra 10 pounds and you said, now what happened? Where did that come from and why? I didn't change anything. Suddenly I'm just not looking like I used to. That 10 pounds is nature's way of providing you with estrone, because the body makes excess or extra estrogen from the fat cells, from that, and gives it back to your system. So those people who actually have a little more meat on their bones actually generally go through menopause a little bit easier than those who don't. So if you're gaining more than 10 pounds, If you're getting more than 10 pounds, perhaps that's something you're going to be looking at because of the adrenals being slowed down, your metabolism being slowed down, that you're going to have to be doing some more exercise. And exercise is like, the #1 drug out there. But that 10 pounds, you may just sort of need to learn to live with it. It's one of those things.
I read conflicting information. I was wondering what your experience or opinion was on the bioidentical hormones and the risks. Some people say because they're bioidentical, there's no health risk. Other times, there's a slight increase in risk of breast cancer because they are hormones. As far as regulating from day to day, that's so time consuming. I'm not sure. I mean, mine is one regimen. It's not altered by day or by hour.
Her question is about the safety, really, of the bioidentical hormones. How long, and so forth. Unfortunately, I don't think there is an absolute answer to that yet, partly because we have not been using bioidentical hormones for that long a period of time. In terms of, she's asking about how long you personally may stay on them, and some women may stay on them for 10, 20 years at least. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. However, we have not had women using them for that really length of time because we were up till maybe 6, 10 years ago. For the most part, people were using the synthetics. So the shift to the bioidenticals really hasn't given us enough of a database yet to know sort of long-term what we're looking at. There is the question about if you're having extra estrogen into the system when the body wouldn't normally produce it, is there a concern for breast cancers in that way? Most of what I've read seems to indicate that if you are being careful about the progesterone, if you are getting checked for making sure that the lining of the uterus is not increasing so that the levels seem to be appropriate to the body, that the risks seem to be fairly small. I have not seen anything that was a big red flag. There are doctors that I recommend that I like Dr. Christine Northrup, who feels comfortable with them. But obviously this is a very personal decision. One book that I also found helpful, which I did not put in your guide because I forgot. This is called Dr. Bob's, B-O-B, Drugless Guide to Balancing Female Hormones. Dr. Bob, and his name is Dr. Robert DeMaria, D-E, capital M, as in Mary, A-R-I-A. Dr. Bob's Drugless Guide to Balancing Female Hormones. His background is actually partly one of coming from a chiropractic and bodywork person. So he's looking at this from a slightly different perspective, but it actually addresses a lot of the issues about how to work with materials other than the bioidentical hormones, but looks at from the point of view of nutrients and from a less, shall we say, sort of slightly esoteric point of view that perhaps Susan Weed does. Now, I do want to recommend Susan Weed's book because I think this is just superb. This is her new edition. It's New Menopausal Years, The Wise Woman Way. This is in your handout. I can't tell you how much I've learned by reading, working, going on weed walks with her. She's a wonderful woman. And she approaches this from the point of view of looking at our bodies and saying, we have a lot to offer for the rest of our lives in ways that maybe we need to look at as a real growth into wisdom state. And I really appreciate her look at this because it helps me to feel less overwhelmed. And she's there as a guide and a support. So I would highly recommend her books as well. We're pretty much out of time. I'm willing to take just one more question, and I'm going to just kind of wrap up a little bit. Yes, Margaret?
Is there an age where you should stop being worried about, you should stop taking estrogen type things or worried about the foods and everything? Is there an age that you should stop kind of doing all of this?
She says, is there an age when you should sort of stop doing all this? So should you be not having to worry about this anymore? And I think that that really is not something that we can answer, because it's very much each person and what their lifestyle is like. I mean, many people will say, as we've learned, you know, the 50 is the new 30 and 70 is the new 50 or whatever. Everybody is aging in a different style in this culture than they were 50, 70, 100 years ago. And we need to make our own decision about how we want to do that. And it may mean using herbs and traditional methods and being as comfortable as we can from a natural perspective, and then coming back to our center, coming back to the sense of the wisdom of age and the grace of age. And it may be putting on the whole brand new look and saying, you know, I'm going to go out and be as vibrant and young, quote unquote, by using bioidentical hormones and working away from that traditional view and going forward from there. I honestly don't think that there is something. We will always be needing to take care of ourselves. And being happy and healthy is going to be part of that no matter what. Yes?
I just wanted to say, I talked to a lot of women who are in my mother's generation. My mother's never taken so much, I mean, she doesn't take aspirin, she's incredibly healthy, she's 80, she's never had any.
How old is she?
She's 80. Wow. A lot of her friends, again, no problem with going through menopause. So I'm wondering whether a lot of what we're going through in this generation is
Yeah. The older generations may not have had it as hard as we have. On the other hand, they may just not have talked about it as much. But we do have the xenoestrogens, as I mentioned, so there is an environmental toxicity that we are dealing with that is different. And we also have the opportunities that that generation didn't have, and we have the community that that generation didn't have to talk, to share, and to understand. And even finally, the media has recognized that this is something that is important, and that women are important, and that we need to continue to have a vibrant, healthy life forward. So I'm going to have to end there. I appreciate you all, and I recognize that we couldn't go over everything. I hope that there's information in the handouts if you need further. I'll be here at the store, and have a good night. Thank you. I'm sorry? Yes.
So if there's any way we could get girls, you know, in their 20s to educate them, because, you know, we come into this and, you know, I'm thinking I'm having a heart attack, I don't know what's wrong with me. If there's some way they could start bringing into younger women to have